Hey, what's up, Facebook folks? It's your old pal Schmucker live in Mishawaka, Indiana, and it's raining here too. So, I think it's raining everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I can't fathom the amount of rain that we've got in the last 3 days. It's like a monsoon. I feel like I'm living in England. But this is Scott Leeper. How are you, buddy?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's nice that I'm super excited that you agreed to sit down with me.
Yeah. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit today about his story. We're going to talk a little bit about a book that he's co-authored that I'm super excited to talk about that as well. This video being made possible by Boggs Automotive at 600 Lighter Drive in Warsaw. Give him a call, 574-268-6360 to schedule your appointment today. Give Andy, Eldon, Colt, and John coffee. You can talk to those guys. They just worked on my wife's car, did a fantastic job. Or you can find them on Facebook. The link is in the description. Click on that and it'll take you right to the Boggs Automotive Facebook page. So Scott, man, buddy, tell us a little bit about you and your story.
So I am a mindset coach. I'm an author of Drowning in Addiction, Sink or Swim, and I'm a speaker. Where all of this started was actually 2012 when I was in the Marine Corps. I actually had to come home, took my dad off life support, watched him take his last breath because of an alcohol addiction. And realistically, that actually created a downward spiral for me. A lot of people, some people when they go through tragedy, they immediately know what their mission is. Well, I went the opposite route and I self-sabotaged after his death. 3 months after my dad died, my son was born. So I'm trying to learn how to be a new dad, learn how to cope with the death of my dad in the manner that it happened, watching him take his last breath. And within his first year of life, I had an affair on my wife. Told her I wanted a divorce, and nobody would have convinced me otherwise at the time. And now, at one point, we did work things back out, and we're still together. We're actually doing very well. But the Marine Corps had found out about the affair, and I ended up getting kicked out with an other than honorable discharge. Lost my top secret clearance. I was a criminal investigator at the time. And so all of that got taken from me, and it was kind of starting from ground zero, almost graduating from high school again. Like, well, now what? You know what I mean? So really had to reinvent myself. And long story short, after going through a couple different jobs, and maybe we'll get into that, I'm not sure, but that led me to this. And we just launched the book. The book has been out a little more than a month now. This past weekend was a month that it had been out. And, now I'm working with addicts in recovery, loved ones of addicts in active addiction or in recovery, and also business professionals, believe it or not. And it's kind of weird how the two have really taken shape, but also working with business professionals too, on mindset, because everything starts and ends in the mindset.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that. I mean, it's ultimately probably a goal of myself to be able to do the same thing, but we'll get to that probably here maybe at some point.
Yeah.
If the good Lord's got that in my future, then by all means, let's do it. But so what's your favorite movie?
Oh, God. Being a Marine Corps, I have favorite war movies. Being a jokester, I have favorite comedy movies. War movies, obviously Full Metal Jacket, Saving Private Ryan, American Sniper, Lone Survivor, those movies. And then the comedy, I mean, I love Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, Ace Ventura, both the When Nature Calls and the first one, Pet Detective, Liar Liar. I was a huge Jim Carrey fan back in the day. Now, Anchorman and Talladega Nights, and things like that. So, yeah, I would say maybe those movies.
It's funny because I throw the just relax questions, I call them,
Yeah.
to kind of break up the monotony of the seriousness of a lot of these videos. And I think those are the hardest ones, and the people dwell on them the longest.
Yeah.
And it's like, I put them in there just because I think it's something to break up the monotony, but it's the stuff they think about the hardest, and it's like, oh, geez, you got to really make me think.
Well, I think why that is because when you're so focused on the mission, like you don't even think about like, you know, life's little blessings, like a favorite movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't think about those things because you're so focused on the mission, you know. So
yeah,
at least that's what it is for me.
But we kind of talked about that too right before we got in the video about how Tony Robbins had used some off-color language to kind of break up the monotony, and you talked about how that kind of took a different twist.
Yeah.
It kind of changed people's perspective and kind of got things back on a different track to how it was going in his view. But so, who or what would you say inspires and encourages you?
I would say inspiration for what I do now absolutely started with my dad's death. You know, there's a couple things that I say now when I talk about my dad is, you know, before I viewed his death as a curse, and now I view it a gift. Because if that didn't happen exactly how it happened, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. We wouldn't be having this conversation. But you know, the other thing I say too is the fact that my dad's a teacher now. You know what I mean? My dad taught me the ways in which not to live. By virtue of his alcoholism and his lifestyle and the way he went out. But also he taught me ambition and he taught me drive because he died with nothing. He died with 5 empty vodka bottles and a pistol underneath his pillow, which was at my grandfather's house. He didn't have his own place. So very much view him as a teacher. He taught me that drive. He taught me that ambition, and that's why I'm so goal oriented and so driven towards chasing down my dreams. What makes me tick. Other than that, I would say, you know, some of the other guys that we talked about briefly. Tony Robbins is a huge inspiration of mine. Sean Stevenson is such the inspiration to me. I've heard him talk multiple times. He's actually in my acknowledgments in my book. He has a book out now as well. It's called Get Off Your Butt, B-U-T. It's basically a book on how to end self-sabotage, and that was one of the best books that I've read. You know, and so Sean Stevenson's a massive influence on my life, and Gary Vee just with his drive, his passion. Eric Thomas's guru speech on Facebook was one of those. It was one of those speeches that when I was in my dark hole, I happened to stumble on that video, and that was kind of like the eye opener for me. You know, if you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you'll be successful, kind of thing. And that was really one of the catalysts to get me out of my own way. So I would say some of those are my influences.
Is that Sean, S-H-A-W-N?
So S-E-A-N.
Of course, I wrote it down wrong.
I got the book right here, actually.
I write this stuff down so I can look it up myself.
Yeah, and this is a phenomenal book to read. Matter of fact, for those of you guys can see that. Get Off Your Butt, phenomenal book. You get a chance, by all means, read this book. Absolutely phenomenal. Of course, read mine too.
Yeah, you're gonna give me this list of books, and I'm gonna have to make a trip to Barnes and Noble after this to buy all of them. Which it isn't any problem. I think my wife might have a little bit of an issue with that, but hey,
get her reading it too, and she'll
there
be like,
you
okay,
go.
I got it. I'm with you.
But I love the story and the inspirations and the encouragements and hearing all the different people and where they get that from. And for those of you that don't know out there, I mean, I personally fought like a 20-year battle with alcohol myself. Mm-hmm. And I've been sober for about 3 years. I work as a certified recovery coach as well. And when I'd seen your story on WNDU, I was like, I want to sit down and talk to that guy. Yeah. So I was kind of why. That was what inspired me to reach out to you and talk to you. And I think that it's amazing to me how small the world is and how people are connected in ways that it's hard to explain and describe. But
I think we're all connected. It's just a matter of time when that connection gets completed, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a firm believer in God's timing, not my own. And it's taken me a whole lot of time and patience to realize that, because I want to push the envelope. I want it to happen now.
I'm the same way.
But sometimes it's like patience
Yeah.
Patience. And I tell you, this whole, we talked about being on workers' comp for over a year and waiting on back surgery. And I mean, that could have probably easily spiraled me back into addiction or hooked on pain pills.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's been a battle in and of itself, and just trying to be patient with that whole process. But it has taught me how to be patient. So don't ever pray for God to provide you with something, because he's not going to just give it to you. He's going to provide you with opportunities that are going to drive you absolutely insane.
Well, I think part of that too is, I mean, there's another book, The Secret. It talks about the law of attraction. You know, and there's also a Netflix documentary on The Secret. It's called The Secret, and it's basically hand in hand with the book. And they talk about, you know, what you wish for, what you want in life, what you want to get, what you want to achieve, like all these things. They talk about the time delay. You know, the time delay is very necessary, because, you know, if we always get exactly what we wish for, things aren't always what they seem. And so what we wish for right now might not necessarily be what we want in 5 years. That relationship, the girlfriend that we had in high school, the boyfriend that you had in high school, like, you know, whatever the case is, and you think, oh my God, I'm going to spend the rest of my life with this person, and then they break up with you, and your heart's broken, but then years down the road, you meet the one that you're supposed to be with, and it's insane the connection you have there, and you look back going, thank God that didn't happen, right? So same thing.
Yeah, I got nothing else to elaborate on that. How has your past experiences helped prepare you for life going forward?
Oh, I mean, I live that. I mean, you know, I use my past experiences, my dad's death, the affair, the getting kicked out of the Marine Corps. I use all that because now I'm able to really tap into my intuition. And because I was also a criminal investigator, like, I can read people very well. And so now, instead of using that to find guilt, now I use that to find pain. Yeah. Because we've all been through some sort of pain. Like, nobody gets out of this life unscarred, right? Physically or mentally, whatever. And so, you know, I use those experiences for my coaching practice because, you know, people want to share certain things. They want to share the things that are the skeletons that are in their closet. The thing is, they feel like they can't because they feel like they're going to be judged. You know, that shame, that guilt. We've all been there, right? And so, by sharing my story and my past and my mistakes and my experiences, that creates a space of non-judgment for people that are going through anything, really. And so that gives them that ability to see, okay, this guy's not going to judge me because he just shared he had an affair with his wife. So obviously he's not going to judge me if he's going to air out his dirty laundry. You know what I mean? So my experiences are very much out there for the world to see. It's in the book. And yeah, I've had people, as they're telling me some of their deepest, darkest things, are like, I don't even know how I'm sharing this with you right now. And I tell them, I know exactly why. Because I open up to you first. I shared with you stuff about me to show you I'm not perfect. I'm human just like you. I've made mistakes. I've been down, you know, terrible roads. And so now I'm able to connect with you because of that. Because I'm sharing with you my mistakes. And now you're able to share yours and get that weight off your shoulders.
Yeah, and I mean that's the whole purpose for the videos and why I do these, and part of the reason why I like doing them live is because there's an element there that you can't recreate. I don't like things. It's not rehearsed. I mean, this is just two guys sitting down in a room talking to one another and sharing stories. And I want people out there to feel that they're not alone. I don't want everybody out there to feel that you're not alone. I mean, if you need help, I mean, reach out to me, reach out to this guy. Find somebody that you can talk to, that you can relate to, that's been down the road that you're struggling with. I mean, I think that society as a whole has created this image that if you struggle and then admit it, that you're weak.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually nothing but the complete opposite of it. I mean, if you struggle and you can get it out there and admit it and start dealing with it and work through it, you're some of the strongest people that I know.
Well, there's this, let's take sports for example. Notre Dame's having a good season, right? They struggle and lose a game that they should have won. All right, just using this as a very superficial example. Everybody starts to bash, the coach and the players, and oh my God, the quarterback, they need to pull the quarterback. And the thing is, those struggles they're a very real struggle. And the thing is, you can look at those situations and apply them to your own life. For every level, there's another devil, right? So, everybody is going to go through some sort of struggle at some point in time in their life. Like I said, we don't get out of life unscarred. We're going to have scars. We're going to die with scars, regardless. And so, now to look at like from the first responder and the veteran ranks, very much view vulnerability as a weakness. Well, the thing is, okay, on a battlefield, on a beat, sure. Can vulnerability get you killed? Sure can. Can vulnerability in a burning building, get a firefighter killed? Absolutely. Being in the inner city as an EMT, can that get you killed if you're vulnerable? Of course it can. However, when you leave the environment, you leave the combat environment as a service member, and you come back to, peacetime, or you come back to garrison or whatever, to be vulnerable is actually a strength. It's a strength because there are certain things that you've got to get off your chest. There are, we hide behind these masks. Another book, it's called The Mask of Masculinity by Lewis Howes. And he talks about 9 different masks that were all, that we use to hide, to kind of show our masculinity. And I identified with 3 of them. The stoic mask, the alpha mask, and the material mask. The stoic mask, being a criminal investigator, you kind of, you think everybody's a liar, and so you just kind of, people are going through pain, but you're just like, yeah, okay, whatever, kind of thing. Like, I got to do my job, and completely dissociate myself. The alpha mask is, being in the Marine Corps for 13 years. Like when you're a Marine, you're like, I'm 10 foot tall and bulletproof, right? And so you have this mentality that you're alpha male and that you cannot show any vulnerability, because otherwise you won't be alpha, you'd be beta, right? And realistically, that really doesn't make sense if you think about it. And then a material mask, always having, the old Mustang and the Harley and all these other things that, look at me, look what I got. But on the inside, it's a shitstorm, right?
Yep.
There's a analogy that I give people when it talks about being, not being vulnerable, hiding things, keeping things bottled up inside, not talking about the things that's going on in your mind. And that analogy is, it's the Coke bottle effect. People are like Coke bottles. You ever shaken up a Coke bottle? Mm-hmm. Right? So when you shake up that Coke bottle, it builds up a lot of pressure on the inside. On the outside, it becomes very rigid, very hard, right? Because it's so pressurized. And then when you pop that cap, it creates an explosion, right? We as humans do the same thing. When we don't talk about the things that we're dealing with, we start to build up a ton of pressure. We build up a lot of pressure, and then we get rough around the edges. We become very toxic. We can become very negative. We start to snap at people for no reason. Maybe it's our own family. Maybe it's complete strangers. Maybe it's mom and dad. Like, who knows? Like, you just snap at people. Maybe somebody looked like somebody that wronged you, or breathed wrong, or sneezed wrong, or whatever, said the wrong thing, and that's that cap that gets popped and creates the explosion. And sometimes that explosion can look like addiction, can look like abuse, can look like suicide, murder, like whatever. And so what I tell people is just pour a little bit out of your Coke bottle at a time. Like, talk just a little bit about just little stuff,
yeah, and
that'll lead to the bigger stuff. And so when you have that explosion, it's like you don't get anything. All right, so kind of went down a long path there, but
good, man. It's all good.
Yeah.
But let's talk about your book. This guy right here, Drowning in Addiction, Sink or Swim. Talking about your new book, Sink or Swim here. Drowning in Addiction. Like, what's it about? What are people going to find in it?
So here, I'll get it a little bit closer so you guys can see it here. So that's our book. So to kind of give you like an overview of the book in general. In this book, I co-authored this book with two other people, Michael Arnold and Andrea Carr. And in this book, it's a very unique book because we have three different perspectives, three completely different perspectives on addiction. Michael, she talks about waking up every hour on the hour to take a swig of Evan Williams to stop her shakes. She flatlined. Wasn't her wake-up call. Andrea talks about trading a alcohol addiction for a eating disorder and kind of going back and forth. Michael loves AA. Andrea does not like AA at all. And then you get to me, and now I share the perspective of the family member. The family doesn't get talked about that much because everybody's so focused on the addict. And that's the issue there is not necessarily that the focus is on the addict, but the issue is there's no spotlight being put on a ripple effect and the other people that addiction affects. So I go in and talk about, so chapters 1 through 3, chapter 1 and 2 is Michael and Andrea's story leading up to needing to go to rehab, needing to get help. Chapter 3 is my story leading up to my dad's death. So chapter 4, we talk about different cultural norms and stigmas around addiction. We talk about the stay-at-home mom that does a line of Coke so she looks bubbly in front of her friends. We talk about, I go in and actually talk about the drinking culture in the military. The Marine Corps was born in a bar. Toon Tavern, November 10th, 1775. So naturally, most Marines look at their heavy drinking, their binge drinking as a talent instead of a problem. And that's a major issue.
Yeah.
Right? And predominantly you see it amongst the lower ranks, just, young and we've all been, partying and all that kind of thing, right? And so there are some senior enlisted and officers that try to quell the issue, but they can't sit in the barracks with them, all hours of the night. Things are going to happen. And so there needs to be a cultural shift there. I talk about the retired police chief who had a 30-year alcohol addiction, not because he had a love for alcohol, but because he couldn't get the images out of his head. Cleaning up body parts on the train tracks, 5 years on a force. 8 o'clock in the morning, going to a suicide scene with a shotgun and going into detail what that looked like. That's the start of his shift.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, a lot of departments, what they had, and I even experienced this in the Marine Corps, was, when you have a bad day, you go to choir practice. And choir practice is not going and singing. Choir practice is going out back and drinking. So, we talk about some of those things. That was chapter 4. Chapter 5, we talk about the consequences. I go in and talk about some of the, maybe the financial consequences. I even put a spreadsheet in there, the $140,000 worth of medical bills from, current bills and creditors and attorneys trying to recoup fees and all this other stuff, just from the bills that we found. And this is just over the matter of the last few years that he was alive. We talk about, there was the med flight was, I think it was somewhere around like $20,000. An insane amount of money. And my dad didn't have insurance. We also talk about the familial consequences, the consequences with family. We talk about the physiological consequences. I don't know if you ever experienced hepatic encephalopathy, or if you've even heard that term. A lot of people haven't. Hepatic encephalopathy is basically where you act drunk, but you haven't had a lick of alcohol. What's happening is your kidneys and your liver are not processing the toxins in your body, in your blood like it's supposed to, so the methane levels raise in your blood. You act drunk. Mm-hmm. My dad was pulled over twice in a 5-hour span on suspicion of drunk driving, the blue zeros. Had my sister not gotten him to the hospital the next day, by way of persuasion, he could have died much sooner than what he did, right? So chapter 5, 6, and 7 are Michael and Andrea's part 2, their recovery stories. Michael talks about her journey through rehab and how she made it a decision at the very beginning that this is my mission now, and I'm going to get better. Otherwise, I'm going to die. Andrea, she talks about the many times she relapsed. She was in recovery, goes to a party, gets blackout drunk, burns a bunch of bridges, has to start over, right? That chapter actually shows people that, for some people, relapse is a very big part of recovery for some. Unfortunately, sometimes it turns deadly, but sometimes that relapse is just another step in the process. Not a complete start over, but just another step in their journey. Chapter 8, we talk about my part 2, and this is where the curveball comes into play. Is in part 2, in my part 2, I talk about my downward spiral. I talk about the affair. I talk about getting kicked out of the Marine Corps. I talk about having to start over, the different jobs that I had, being fired multiple times, leading up to being a mindset coach, writing a book, speaking in front of rehab centers and recovery graduate. Well, I don't even think I talk about that part yet, but leading up to wanting to become a speaker and becoming a coach. And I talk about just how I had to, I've got the downward spiral and bring myself back up kind of thing, and then chapter 9, we talk about the different resources that we use for our own mental growth. Chapter 10, we talk about the many avenues to recovery, because a lot of people think just AA or just rehab. They don't realize that in rehab you have mindfulness, you have music therapy, there's smart recovery, there's 12 steps, there's IOP, right? People don't realize for the family there's Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, PAL, coaching, right? And even for the addicts in recovery, coaching. One big thing I'm working on is creating programs for addicts in their aftercare. 50 to 75% relapse rate coming out of rehab graduation. That's massive.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's because people are not connecting and not holding themselves accountable to their aftercare plan. Chapter 11, we talk about the ripple effect. What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? Do you want to completely destroy your family, maybe your image? Or do you want to rebuild and have a very lasting, very positive legacy for your family, for your kids, for the people around you? And then we end the book with a call to action. What are you going to do? Are you going to sink or are you going to swim? The mission in this book is for people to start recovering out loud. It's not that I don't agree with Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, AA, NA. However, in my opinion, anonymity has ran its course. Anonymity has created a stigma of shame, of guilt. And when you stay anonymous about your addiction, whether it was alcohol, shopping, sex, heroin, doesn't matter. You stay anonymous. You don't get support. You don't get public accountability. You stay in the shadows. And what can it do for a lot of people? Put them into relapse. Mm-hmm. Make them relapse. And for a lot of people, if we have a 2017 overdose deaths alone were over 70,000. 1999 was between 16 and 17,000. That's a 417% increase in 18 years. That doesn't include the 88,000 alcohol-related deaths annually. That should tell everybody that there is a massive problem and there needs to be a paradigm shift. People need to start recovering out loud so you can get that support, that accountability, and those that are able to recover out loud will start to fight that stigma. South Bend, we just tried to get a sober living facility open. it got shut down by city council. The Oxford House is trying to buy a house in a neighborhood in South Bend for a sober living facility. People were interviewed. One guy says, well, what are they rehabbing? Are they rehabbing alcoholics? Are they rehabbing drug addicts? Are they rehabbing murderers? What are they rehabbing? It's like, to me, that boggles my mind. 1 in 10 Americans are affected by a drug abuse issue. 1 in 10. I don't know about you. I know more than 9 people.
Yeah.
So what that should tell everybody is every person is affected by addiction to some degree. Every person in the country. Everybody.
Oh, I mean, I agree 100%. And there does need to be more... The darkness that has surrounded alcohol and drug addiction it has ran its course. I mean, the anonymity of it is absolutely, I think it's asinine.
It's insane.
I mean, it's like, why? I don't understand the purpose of it. I mean, maybe it goes back to, I think, because they want to protect people to a certain extent, but I think you're inhibiting people by trying to protect them. I mean, I think the accountability the video provides, the accountability that by telling people, I mean, I kind of started from day one with sharing my story and going through it as I was happening. And I mean, the accountability in my community that I got from that was off the charts.
Yeah.
I mean, you step foot in a bar, somebody's going to be like, dude, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you go to the grocery store and people see you walking down the liquor store or the liquor aisle and be like, hey, sure you need to be walking down there?
And it could come from a place of compassion rather than a place of judgment.
And I think that's where that shift needs to happen.
Absolutely.
Is when people address that. People don't want to feel judged.
Right.
They want to feel loved.
But you know what I'll say to the being judged too is, and I tell people this all the time. The thing is, everybody's going to get judged by something, for something, by somebody. But for every one person that judges you, 10 more, 50 more, 100 people need to hear your story specifically. Right? We go talking about, we're all connected. You share your story, you're going to find the people you're connected to. You're going to find the people that you can relate to. You're going to find the people that you can help through their dark times after you've been through your dark times. And I promise you, if you're doing that chances are that's because somebody else did the same thing for you. Reach one, teach one. Right?
Yep.
And so you make that paradigm shift by opening up, by being vulnerable, by allowing yourself to be judged by one person. Trust me, when I came out and with the affair and being kicked out, there were a lot of people gave me weird looks. Now I'm so wide open about it, like I don't care who gives me a weird look because I know the people I'm reaching. Because I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the people that are judging are the people that have been through similar, worse stuff, and they're just not getting out of their own way. They're just projecting their insecurities onto you for being bold, for being open, being courageous.
100% they are. And I think if there's so many armchair quarterbacks and keyboard warriors that, man, I can't begin to tell you how much that needs to stop.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're somebody out there and you're throwing somebody under the bus from the other side of a keyboard, knock it off. I mean, you're not helping anybody. You're raining on somebody's parade that you might find yourself sometime in the need of an umbrella.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you need help, get the help. I mean, don't be ashamed to reach out to somebody and talk to somebody about it. I mean, there's such a stigma that it needs to stop.
Well, and I'll even talk about, Wendy Williams came out talking about she's staying at a sober living facility because I think she said it was cocaine, I think. And I went and I found one of the posts, I think it was a Wendy Williams show. I started following her because of that, and seeing some of the just crazy responses. People were bashing her left and right, and I'm going to tell you something, like, to be, at any level, and to publicly come out without anybody knowing and say, I am staying in a sober living facility because of this addiction. When you've been in the public eye for so long, I don't think people understand the type of courage that takes. That takes a ton of courage, and people bashed her consistently. And each one of those that are bashing her behind the computer, they're the ones that need to get help too.
Yep.
Because there's something in their past, in their history, that they are pissed off about. And they can't get past. And it goes back to the Coke bottle thing. They're now just rough around the edges and just toxic. It's a cancer. And until you start talking about the issues that you've had, you're going to continue spreading your cancer to other people. Now that might have stung some people, but it's the truth.
Yeah. And social media, man, I can't tell you how horrible. I mean, it can be such a great and such a positive thing, and an awesome outlet for stuff, but it is just absolutely horrible and negative. And to be quite honest, I really don't even scroll. I mean, I get so tired of seeing the same garbage on there over and over, and I've even had people throw stuff. They're like, well, you said this today, but back on whatever date in 1935, you said this, and you're such a hypocrite. Well, so, you know what?
Views can't change?
People change. I mean, give people a break, cut them a little slack, and that's why I try as hard as I can to practice integrity. Mm-hmm. I mean, I want to be the same person today that I was yesterday, that I'm going to be tomorrow. I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. I'm going to hold true to my word. Mm-hmm. But part of that it's been a process. I mean, it's a journey, and a journey that I still make every day. I mean, I screw up.
But what species are we?
Yeah, and we're all human. I mean,
right.
There's got to be a forgiveness factor out there. And I think the more and more that guys like yourself, mm-hmm. and the more and more we can get some of these videos out there with folks, and people understand it. People are hurting.
Yeah.
People are struggling. I mean, I was talking to a guy last week, Troy Cleland from Michiana Christian Camp, and he shared a statistic that second graders, kids as young as the second grade, they're starting to have a suicide problem.
Yeah, that's insane.
And I'm thinking, these kids are 7 or 8 years old, haven't even got their life started.
Second grade, I was probably eating glue.
Yeah, and picking boogers and
right.
doing who knows what, riding my bike, skinning knees.
Not thinking about how to end the pain.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a problem out there. And turning a blind eye to it, we're past that. I mean, if somebody's getting help, quit throwing them under the bus for how they're getting help, and ask them how you can help them and what you can be a blessing to them. I mean, how you can do that with them.
Yeah.
And I think the more and more that, I go back to guys like us that have been there,
yeah.
been down that road.
Yeah.
I mean, probably two completely different backgrounds of life, like in your book. I mean,
yeah.
I think that's one of the awesome things is the different perspectives. Mm-hmm. And I mean, they may see somebody like you with, you got tattoos, you got the beard, and they're already forming an opinion about you before they've even heard your words.
Sure.
And stop. I mean, that stuff has to stop. I mean, people probably look at me and they're like, oh, just some dude in a Cubs hat, a Save Ferris t-shirt, probably has no clue the way the world works. Well, in a lot of ways, no, I don't. But I've seen a lot and experienced a lot, and
we can only go off our experiences.
Yeah, I mean that's all we got.
And the thing is, I actually embrace it when somebody passes, or judges a book by its cover when they look at me. I honestly kind of embrace it, because as soon as I open my mouth and I start to talk with them, it's not about the typical redneck, hell yeah, brother, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? I actually, it blows them away when I come from a place of compassion and like have this heart that I open up to other people when they think that I'm just about, Harleys and weights and that's it. Like, so when I'm able to do that, when I'm able to share it, and that's the beautiful thing about what I do, is I do have, you look at me and you can think certain stereotypes. It doesn't bother me. But I break those stereotypes as soon as I share my story, and then my intuition kicks in, knowing that, okay, you're going to share with me something about you that you need help through. right? And you talked a minute ago about forgiveness, and that's not just a religious thing. Forgiveness. I talk forgiveness all the time in my coaching, because a lot of times people will they say they get past certain situations that have occurred. The thing is, they didn't forgive the person that wronged them, or they didn't forgive themselves, which means either the person, who very well could be dead and gone, or on the other side of the world, they still control that person, or the situation still controls that person. And people are like, how they don't control me? How do they control me? Well, it's very simple. They control you because I'll create a situation here, right? Let's say your spouse cheated on you, and you meet somebody that has the name of the person your spouse cheated on you with. You immediately think about that person. You immediately get pissed off. Well, guess what? That person is controlling your emotions.
Yep.
And when I paint that picture like that, people are like, oh my God, it makes sense. Or the situation, they still haven't forgiven themselves. And sometimes that's harder. But if people can forgive themselves, then they can start to open up the Coke bottle. And then they can start to release some of the things that they've been through. Because a lot of times, too, people are afraid of fear and judgment from other people because they judge themselves. And they have the shame and guilt inside themselves.
Yep.
You know, and in the book, The Four Agreements, talks about the level of abuse we put ourselves through. And so, you know, let's say we look at somebody being in an abusive relationship. And outside looking in, we're going, how can that person possibly stay in that relationship? It was very simple, actually. That person abuses themselves so much, right? Their level of abuse is up here, right? People can abuse them anywhere in here, and they're going to let them go. So they'll match that, right? So that person that they're in an abusive relationship with, they'll match that level of abuse. Now, that person leaves the second that the spouse goes past that abuse level that they put themselves through. And finally, they say, I've had enough.
Yeah.
But until that point happens, they're still allowing them to abuse themselves. And so you got to be able to forgive yourself so your abuse level in yourself comes down. And now you know you're worth more. And all of this right here, all of this abuse is now gone. Right?
And the forgiveness issue too. I mean, there's got to be a level of trust. I mean, you talk about, like you use the spouse as an example. I mean, any person that you enter into a relationship with after that trust is shot. Mm-hmm. So I mean, anything that person did, be it phone, be it whatever. I mean, they may be talking to a person of the opposite sex. Mm-hmm. I mean, you created this sense of question. So I mean, that control is still there, and that ability to let go is one of the hardest things that I had to do when I decided to sober up. I mean, I wronged a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I mean, stole, cheated, just did some pretty shady crap. Mm-hmm. But there was that. I mean, there's that forgiveness factor that, and you hinted on it there a little bit about forgiving yourself. Yeah. I mean, in order to love others well, you got to love yourself. I mean, it's not being. And we're talking about like a healthy love of yourself. We're not talking like conceited, arrogant, like so full of yourself that you look down on everybody. Mm. We're talking where you can look yourself in the mirror, say, hey, you know what? I love the person that I see in the mirror. Yeah. Because for a lot of people, they can't do that. Mm-hmm. I mean, there may be a CEO or an exec of a company or a busy soccer mom or whoever that can't look themselves in the mirror and like what they see because they got themselves so busy. They might be drowning in addiction. Yeah. They might be trying to live up to this level of expectations because all their group of friends is in a certain class and they're afraid if they don't meet those standards, and they sacrifice so much to get there. Yeah. And we need to start loving ourselves and loving other people a lot better and tearing down barriers instead of building walls. Yeah. I mean, you build those walls to protect yourself. Well, that's great, but you're also not letting anybody else in.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's so like your book. Where can folks get a copy of that? Because I think, I mean, I highly recommend it, and it's something I'm going to pick up myself and read. But,
Yeah. So right now, so those of you local, it's here at the Barnes and Noble store here at the UP Mall. You can find it on the Barnes and Noble website. You can find it on Amazon, and it is eligible for Prime. If you want the ebook version, you can find it. There's Kindle and Nook versions. You can find it on the Google Play Store. You can find it on the Apple iBook Store. Yeah, those are really the main consumer sites that you can find them on.
That's awesome, and I highly recommend you go out and get it. And some of the other books that we've talked about too, that he'll mention. I mean, read. Find yourself reading. I mean, if you can do it for 10 minutes a day, 10 pages a day, do it. I mean, I try my best.
Yeah.
But it's amazing the amount of knowledge that you can accrue just by reading like 10 minutes a day.
A lot of the stuff that we talked about today is from, a lot of the learning through reading books and through certification courses, but coupling that with life experience, right? And bridging the gap to apply what I read to life experience and how to make the life experience the blessing versus the curse, right? So, yeah, like to recap some of the books that I talked about, it was Get Off Your Butt by Sean Stevenson, The Mask of Masculinity by Lewis Howes, The Four Agreements, and a Hispanic guy, I've drawn a blank on on the author's name. I think those were the three that I talked about.
Google it. It'll pop up.
It's phenomenal books, by the way. So yeah.
I mean, a couple of the biggest books that helped me were 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And the big one that got me was a book called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. And that kind of goes back to the Slight Edge principle says that success is simple. Let me make sure I get this right. Simple mistakes repeated over time will create failure, while simple disciplines repeated over time will create success. So that if it's easy to do, it's also easy not to do.
Right.
So it's where that slight edge occurs, where you're just making those simple errors in judgment repeatedly over time, like eating that apple a day, saving $1 a day, eating at home versus maybe going to a restaurant, or deciding to read the book versus pick up a video game or the TV remote, or just those simple things in life that get overlooked that you think, okay, so I eat 7 apples a week, probably not going to see any results.
Yeah.
But you get that compound effect over time, and then you start to see where, oh, so I saved $1 a day, now I got $7. At the end of the month, I got $28. So I mean, that's where, again, I think we talked about it before we went on here, that a lot of my sobriety was based off of business principles.
Yeah.
But that stuff is so life applicable when you look through it.
It is.
And
and that's and that goes right into what I do as a coach. Like, when you work with a coach, you're working on habit change. You're working on lifestyle change. I'm trying to think of the statistic. I want to say 70% of deaths are 70% of lifestyle deaths are easily avoidable by habit change. I want to say that's the statistic. I might screw that. I think I'm screwing it up a little bit, but I mean, that's the gist of it. Like, so much of our problems that we have right now, our health issues are largely lifestyle issues. And so when you work with a coach, you're making some of these changes, and even mindset coaching. Like, there's an aspect of health coaching here, because people can literally think themselves into sickness. People don't understand the power of the mind, and that negative thinking, what that can do to your life, and how it can destroy your life and your relationships and your health. The other book that I talked about was The Secret. And it talks about law of attraction. What you think, you attract. If you're constantly thinking negative, guess what you're going to get? More negative.
Yep.
You know, if you're constantly thinking positive, well, guess what? You're going to have more positivity in your life. If there's something that you want, you start thinking that you want that thing. As long as your actions meet your thought process, you can achieve what it is you're trying to achieve or get what you're trying to get. There is a time delay, like we talked about, but that's the piece that people don't understand. Life is happening to me. No, my friend, life is happening for you. You got to see the blessing and the challenge. You have to see the gift in what you think is the curse. Up here I have, the Rocky quote, the latest Rocky movie before it went into the Creed movies. And, you know, to kind of recap, he's talking to his son in the street before this big fight. You know, he's older now and he's getting ready to fight some young champion. People are making fun of him, thinking that he's not going to do well. He's going to get rolled. And his son is blaming him because he thinks he's living in his dad's shadow. And his words to his son was, let me tell you something you already know. Life ain't no sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, we'll beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. Matter of fact, I'm wearing this shirt right now, crazy enough. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, go out and get what you're worth. But you got to be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. Right? The point to that whole quote, and that is one of my life quotes. The point to that quote: life's going to hit you in the mouth. It don't matter who you are. Life's going to punch you in the face. But it's up to you to either A, stay in the fetal position and take it, or B, get up and fight back. And fight back doesn't mean get up and be toxic. Fighting back means get up and being positive in the face of adversity. We're going to have adversity. How are you going to handle it? We can't control what other people do. We can't control what other people say or think. All we can do is control how we react. Right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you talked about the law of attraction. I mean, one of the first things I learned was from Jim Rohn. I talked about, but it's success is not to be pursued, but it's attracted by the person that you become. So I mean, if you want more, then you got to become more.
Yeah.
So I mean, like pretty much all of my sobriety process was based off of, stuff like that. So, it's those little things. It's about becoming more, getting rid of that negative thinking, learning how to respond to situations rather than react.
Yeah. So,
and that's the first step in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is, are you proactive or are you reactive?
Yeah.
Are you responding to situations or are you just reacting to what the world's throwing your direction? Yeah. So, it's a lot of that stuff, and there's so much benefit from reading the books and listening to people. Listen to Scott's stuff. Look up Eric Thomas. Look up the Tony Robbins. Look up the Zig Ziglars. Listen to the Stephen Covey stuff. Listen to the Jim Rohn stuff. Listen to people that have done what you want to do and learn from them. It's not plagiarism if you take what they're telling you, put it through your life's filter and your experiences, and then go forward with it. I think what was the one you said? Reach one, teach one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I love it.
Yeah.
So, going forward, that's really what life's all about, is teaching the next generation or somebody else that needs help what we've learned going forward and being a light in a world full of darkness.
Yeah. Well, we don't go through these experiences just to go through these experiences. We don't go through these experiences because God's a mean kid, with a magnifying glass on an anthill. Mm-hmm. Higher power, whoever it is that is your higher power. That being is not this mean kid on the anthill with the magnifying glass trying to burn you. The whole point to the struggles that you go through, so you can go through them. Teach your kids how to handle those challenges, teach people around you, and teach people that come into your life to help them navigate those challenges. That's why we go through what we go through. And so we can grow. The other piece to this is, so you remember back when we were kids and you know, our arm would hurt or our back would hurt or something. It's not an injury, and our parents were like, well, it's a growing pain, right?
Yep.
Okay. All you guys remember that. As an adult, we go through the same thing, but there's two differences here. Our growing pains as adults are now psychological instead of physiological. The other piece to this is now it's a choice. Now it becomes a choice to grow through it. You can either grow through it, grow as a person, allow that scar tissue on your skin or in your mind, in your heart, to toughen up so you can be more compassionate, or you stay stuck, become toxic, view life as happening to you instead of for you, and you're just simply going through the crap that you're dealing with instead of growing from it. Right? So even as adults, we still go through growing pains. But we have to view them as growing pains instead of just life's a cruel joke and what a lot of people say is FML. F my life.
Yep.
That's what a lot of people say. Right? That's how people got to start viewing it. The growing pains. And I'm going to grow through this. I'm going to grow through this pain. Instead of life sucks.
I mean, you can go through and, you know what, screw my luck and whatever and blame everybody else, but it's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
It's going to get, if you keep doing the same things that you've always done, you're going to keep getting what you've always got.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is that simple. I mean, if you want things to change for you, then you're going to have to change and start doing things that you've never done before and probably look at things in a different light. I mean, I love it that you talked about how we can't change other people.
Right.
I mean, what other people do, what other people say, how they act, that's their problem.
Yeah.
That's on them. That's their issues. But what you can control of and what you always have control of is you and how you respond, how you react, the way you learn from the experience that you're going through.
Yep.
I mean, I like to think of myself as a big lump of clay that God's molding and shaping on a daily basis to be something that He can use to help others and maybe inspire and encourage others to do the same thing. So, I mean, that's something that, I mean, I'd highly encourage other people to look at things the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just about letting go of you and becoming somebody that can be molded.
Yeah.
So, we've kind of already went through it, but, well, I guess maybe we didn't hit that question. Did I ask you what your favorite restaurant was? I don't think I did.
I don't think you did.
Oh, I can ask you now. What's your favorite restaurant?
I would say favorite food is sushi. So anywhere that's got good sushi is my spot. We lived in Okinawa, Japan for 3.5 years. So it was like cast out here, bring it in, slap it on a table, cut it up, there you go, kind of thing. Not really, but that's surrounded by water, so pretty much, you know what I mean. And so we gained this affinity for sushi, and so that's. Anywhere
anywhere close?
So there's I always screw up the name. It's like Asian Zing or something. They're Main Street in Mishawaka, and then Wuxi in South Bend. What's the one up north? I think it's called Soho. Is another good one. Only been there once, but they had some decent sushi. East Tokyo Hibachi out on Ireland has phenomenal. Matter of fact, I think it's $20 all you can eat sushi. So it's like, yeah. Me and a buddy of mine, I think we put away 14 rolls just between the two of us. We got to roll ourselves out of there, but it was good. It was good. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what advice would you offer others out there, maybe that you've learned, either like for recovery, life in general, just putting it out there?
Well, obviously everything that I've said is all stuff that I make sure people hear from me, but one thing that I haven't talked about was life's a journey. Life's a journey, and The thing is, we get so wrapped around the axle about the destination that we're going to or where we've come from, right? Instead of living in the present. And you know, if you're constantly thinking about the future, anxiety, constantly thinking about the past, depression, right? Living in a moment, being able to fully live in a moment can be happiness, regardless of your income level or whatever. And now that's not to say that don't strive for goals and don't strive to better yourself. That's an integral part of you know, growing as a person. However, take one step at a time. You know, it's you know, 1% improvement a day is essentially what you need. And in another analogy, obviously you can tell I like giving analogies. So you remember Ace Ventura when Nature Calls, right?
Yep.
Okay. So at the beginning of the movie, when he's in the ashram, right, that shrine at the top of the mountain, right? You see that massive staircase, millions of steps scaling this mountain to get to the top of to the shrine, right? Well, going through life or, you know, reaching for goals, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like viewing that staircase where you're focused so much on that shrine that you can hardly see at the top of the mountain, and you're going, how am I ever going to get there? So many steps. How am I ever going to get there? This is the one time in life I tell people, look down. Focus on that next step. When you take that next step, then you just focus on the next one. And then the next one. And the next one. And before you know it, because you focused on those next steps, you're going to look up and you're at your shrine. You're going to look up and you've reached your goal. You're going to look up and you've become the person that you were striving to become. But I tell people, enjoy the process. Enjoy the journey. Because if you're focusing just on the shrine,
you're going to miss all the stairs getting there.
Well, not only that, but you focus on that shrine. But you hate the journey getting to that shrine. And then you enjoy that shrine for 10 minutes. You enjoy that goal for 10 minutes, reaching that goal. What's behind that goal? Another one. So let's say you reached 2 goals in a matter of a year. What good does it do you to only enjoy life for 10 minutes out of 365 days? Now, there's times I got to remember that. There's times where I have a challenging day. And it's like, am I just spinning my wheels? But I go back to that analogy. Because I know if I don't enjoy this, well, I'm going to burn out and I might just go backwards. I might just say, screw it, I'm not reaching for the shrine. And so I have to remember that I've just got to enjoy what I'm doing. I just have to enjoy the process, enjoy the journey. I will get to my goal. I've ran a marathon. I've competed in bodybuilding competitions. I've written a book, right? Those were all goals, and I've reached them. So if I'm not enjoying life's journey, I'm just going to hate life. And I'm going to fall into the FML, right? F my life. I can't afford to do that. Nobody else can afford to do that. So the bottom line is just take that next step. 1% improvement a day. 1% improvement, what does that do? Quite simple. You're still improving.
Yep.
And in 100 days, what do you have? 100% improvement. That's the focus. Don't focus on 25%, 100% change overnight. It's not going to happen. When it comes to weight loss, people are like, oh man, I want to lose 50 pounds in 3 weeks.
Good luck.
Did it take 3 weeks to put that 50 pounds on? More than likely not. Are there extenuating circumstances? Sure. So it's going to take you overnight 3 weeks to take that 50 pounds off? Absolutely not. And if you do, you're hurting yourself.
Yeah.
So you just got to enjoy that journey, enjoy that process.
Yeah, and that there kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier about the simple disciplines repeated over time. It's that simplicity, enjoying that 1%, and the compound effect that ends up kicking in over time. I mean, you get 1 day sober, then you get 2, and then you get 3, and it's a journey and it's a process. And I mean, if I've learned anything from guys that have like decades of sobriety experience, I mean, I was the first guys I went to. I didn't go to, the guy that had 30 days. I didn't go to the guy that had 3 years. I didn't go to the guy that even had 5 years. I went to the guys I knew that had like 10, 15, 20. I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit down with you and let's talk.
Yeah.
I want to know how you got there.
Well, Eminem just celebrated his 11th year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And for somebody in that industry and doing what he's doing, I mean, that's huge.
That's massive.
I mean, that's ginormous. I can't even imagine like being in the spotlight and all the stuff that comes your way. But then there again, I mean, the more that he gets that out there, the more accountability is going to be there.
Yeah.
It goes back to stop keeping things in the dark and let that light shine. I mean, don't be afraid, folks. Don't be afraid to let that light shine in on whatever's going on in your life. I mean, I can't express that enough. Let the light shine in your life.
You know, there was I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine this past week when I was in Phoenix, and I was going through some things, and you know, and her thing was, she was like, I just want to get my glow back. And we were having this conversation outside. It was starting to get dusk out, right? And so the lights were starting to turn on. And I pointed over to a light that had a glow. I said, look, that light's glowing. How much is that light illuminating, though? Not much. So if you've lost your glow, and this is for you guys here too, if you've lost your glow, good. Because guess what? That just means that you're trading your glow in to be the freaking lighthouse. And to be that absolute beacon for other people, that guiding light for other people that are lost at sea. So be that lighthouse. Even if you do have that glow, fine. You still have the glow? Fine. Strive to have the lighthouse. Strive to be the lighthouse.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
So what role does your faith play in your life?
So, you know, I kind of talked a little bit about, you know, the law of attraction, you know, I have my faith. I believe in God, but I don't go to church. I believe, you know, we talked a little bit earlier, you know, one of the things is, you know, I get in these conversations with people and just things start to roll off my tongue and I just say things that are profound and just make sense, and then I go to recap what I talked about. I forget almost all of it. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine about that. I'm like, man, dude, I got horrible memory issues. And he goes, no, that's not a memory issue. He says, what's happening is there's a higher power speaking through you. It's not even your words anymore, but you're being used to reach people. He says, there's a higher power speaking through you. And I firmly believe that. You know, am I the most religious and go to Sunday or go to church every Sunday and that kind of thing? No. Do I have a mouth that's gonna make truckers and sailors blush on occasion? Absolutely. I spent 13 years in the Marine Corps. It becomes a craft, I guess. But yeah, I believe like you have to have faith in your journey daily anyway. Even the days that you don't feel like, even the days that you're most challenged. Maybe you made a mistake and you're beating yourself up over it. Guess what? That's a part of the journey. My mistakes have been a part of my journey. You know, so you know when it comes to faith, like, yeah, having faith in the higher power, having faith in the fact that you know, life is happening for me, and things happen for a reason. My struggles have a purpose behind them, and just owning that and being able to know that I'm growing through this, and that keeps me from being that toxic person. If I didn't have that, even becoming a coach and becoming an entrepreneur and going through some of these struggles that I've been through as an entrepreneur, if I didn't have that thought process, I would easily be going backwards. And I would easily become that toxic person. I wouldn't have the empathic side that I do. I wouldn't be following my intuition. So it's all about, and the intuition, like the conversation I had with my friend this past weekend, like my intuition told me that she wasn't putting off the energy she usually does. And I called her on it. My intuition told me to talk with her. She wanted to talk to me about the things she was dealing with anyway. But she wouldn't have reached out to me had I not talked to her first. But because I did, I was able to help her find some of those changes, right? And so, you know, and faith plays all a part of that, because if I didn't have faith that I would be able to reach somebody, I would clam up myself and not put myself out there in a vulnerable way to be able to help other people.
Well, I'll be 100% honest. I'd rather spend every single hour of every day of my life sitting down with somebody like yourself that lives out faith on a day-to-day basis than to spend my time sitting with somebody that goes to church, sits in a pew, listens to what's heard, walks out the door, and practices absolutely nothing that they've learned.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a big part of me and who I am. Is, you know what? Yeah, I go to church on Sundays.
Yeah.
But I also spend time reading my Bible on a daily basis so that I can learn and I can help other people. And I am that person that I try to be, and I take what I've learned and I try to apply it. No, I don't do it perfect. I don't think God asks us to do it perfect.
No.
But, I love the authenticity and the transparency of somebody that has a genuine faith and just a real, just aura about them.
And that's, there's a saying, and I've said this multiple times myself, and I believe it. Some of the nicest people you'll ever meet are covered in tattoos and ride loud Harleys. Some of the most judgmental people you meet go to church every Sunday. And that's that's not to say everybody who goes to church is judgmental. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But we've had the conversation.
Yeah.
I told you some of my experiences. Going to church and seeing some of these people absolutely negative. And maybe that's where they go to help shed some of their negativity, and more power to them. But that toxicity and that judgment is so strong, and they think, I go to church every Sunday, so I'm good. And you don't go to church, you have a tattoo, you just demolished your body, and therefore you are scum. You have a heroin addiction, you're just a junkie that probably lives under a viaduct. You're just an alcoholic, so you're not listening to the Bible at all. Like, okay, understand that we're human, we're imperfect, we make bad decisions, we've all been there. But it's not about the current situation. It's about how do we move forward.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're, and kind of like going into the choice versus disease discussion argument with addiction, people pointing fingers saying, well, you're, it's a choice. The problem with that, one, are there some situations where it's a choice? Yeah. Are there some situations where it's a disease? Absolutely. Does it become a disease overall? Yes, because the chemistry in your brain changes. However, I actually did a Facebook Live video. This was last year at some point. And I just kind of went off about, it really doesn't matter if it's a disease or if it's a choice. The fact of the matter is somebody needs help. Mm-hmm. And if you constantly point fingers, guess what? You're judging other people. That person, that brother, sister, mom, dad, son, daughter, friend, relative, coworker, whatever, sitting right next to you, quietly dealing with a pill addiction because they haven't been able to, because they got addicted to the oxys that they were prescribed from a injury. Now they're going deeper into their addiction because their best friend or, whatever your relationship is to them, just judged them unknowingly.
Yep.
Right?
And I just had a post not too long ago that threw out an analogy, one of your favorite things there, but kind of equated it to two people sitting in a room and the one person's over in the corner drowning in dehydration.
Yep.
And there's a table with a glass of water on it, and you're trying to tell them why they're thirsty and explain to them why they're thirsty rather than just get them a glass of water. Be like, here, let me give you a glass of water and help you. Because like you say, while people are debating this issue, whether it's a choice, whether it's disease, it's probably both.
Yeah.
To a certain extent. There are people. The people are dying. Probably as we sit here, people died because they're drowning in addiction. And nobody's helping them.
Yep.
So I think that stigma's got to change. That awareness has to get out there, and people need to realize that everybody's struggling. Everybody's fighting their own battle on a daily basis. That It might be addiction. It might be drinking too much. Somebody may be struggling with pornography. Somebody may be struggling with overeating. Maybe it's overspending. Maybe it's spending too much time at work. Maybe it's neglecting their children because they're doing something they shouldn't be. I don't know. Everybody's struggling with something. But the whole purpose of the videos is to let people know they're not alone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I want people to understand is you're never alone. I mean, and I'll sit down and talk to anybody so that they can share their story. And hopefully people can relate.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the beauty of it. And so, I mean, the last question I got for you here is, who is Scott Leeper at his core?
An empath. You know, I talked earlier about being that criminal investigator, being able to read people. You know, and really, I've turned that into empathy. Because the thing is, everybody struggles. You know, we've talked about this. And so for me at my core, like, I feel people's pain, and sometimes it's almost palpable. I can feel it that much, to the point where I've called out complete strangers, known somebody for an hour. Prime example, last year, she's a friend of mine now, and we had been talking for an hour, and I'd only known her an hour. Very confident person. I said, "Can I be honest with you?" And it was funny because, you know, this was also at the health coach conference last year, and you know, it was evening time, and you know, when you're a female talking to a guy, sometimes the guy goes, "Can I be honest with you?" It kind of like, you know, you
goes
start
a different direction.
You start to go like, "Oh my God, here it comes." You know what I mean? But I said, "Look, you're a very confident person. You come off as a very confident person. That's a phenomenal trait to have. However, you're using that as a mask to hide something, some pain that you still haven't gotten through, some pain you're dealing with right now." Her jaw hit the floor. She couldn't believe that I called it out. And she goes, "How the hell did you see that?" That's just, I follow my intuition, and as the days go by, my intuition gets stronger. So I'm a very intuitive empath. If I feel your pain, I'm going to say something. Now, do I feel everybody's pain? No. I'm sure there's been plenty of people I've talked to that I didn't. But when my intuition tells me, like, you need to talk with this person.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're very guarded, and they're like, "I'm not talking to you about that." Okay. It's okay. I'm here. You know? But a lot of times they do. They come out and they talk about the things that they've been through, and that helps them see a new light. Because I'm not sympathizing with them. I'm empathizing. And there's a big difference.
Yeah.
Brene Brown, phenomenal author, phenomenal speaker. She studies vulnerability and shame. She's got a new a new special out on Netflix as well. I believe it's called Call to Courage. Watched it, phenomenal. Definitely recommend anybody watch it. But I saw she did like this little cartoon to explain the difference between sympathy and empathy. She said sympathy is kind of like somebody being stuck in a hole, and a person sympathizing with them basically looks down the hole and goes, "Man, oh, that sucks. Hope you can get out." Right? That's sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she added to it, I'm kind of abbreviating. Empathy is where you see that person in that hole and you go down with them. You sit in that hole with them. And it's not about getting to their level and being negative with them, but it's about going down there and say, "Listen, I hear you. I see you. I love you. I may have been you. I may have been through identical situations. I understand you. Let's get out of this together. Let's face this pain together. I'm here for you. I don't feel for you. I feel with you." That's the difference. And I believe that's who I am at the core.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, I can tell you there was a point in time in my life where I probably would have been like this dude's nuts.
Yeah. Oh, I get that.
But the more and more, and the older I get, you start to realize that each person's got a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And each person has been blessed. And part of figuring out who we are and our purpose, or just how we can be a blessing to other people, is realizing those gifts and using those gifts that we've been given. I think so many times we get caught up in trying to use other people's gifts.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's their story.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't be you. You can't be me. But we can all be who we are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's great that you do, you're using your gifts and blessing other people. And, man, it's been a pleasure to sit down with you. I love it, brother. And again, highly recommend picking up this book, Drowning in Addiction, Sink or Swim, co-authored with Michael and Andrea there. So I think that's great. I'm probably going to order one on Amazon when I get out of here. So it'll get delivered to my door what is it, Wednesday? It'll be here by Friday. Looking forward to it. And again, videos today being brought to you by Boggs Automotive at 600 Lighter Drive in Warsaw. Give them a call, 574-268-6360 to schedule your appointment for your vehicle. And you can also find them on Facebook. There's links to Scott, there's links to the book, and there's also links to Boggs in the description on the video. And tomorrow I'll be talking with the brand new head coach of the Grace College Lancers men's basketball team, Scott Moore. That'll be in the morning, and I got 2 tomorrow, so it's going to be a busy day. Normally it's only 1, but tomorrow evening I'll be talking with the owner of Boggs Automotive. They've just acquired a new business on Center Street, so kind of excited to sit down and talk to her about that. So tomorrow morning will be at 10, and tomorrow evening will be at 6. So schedule that. And again, Scott, man, I appreciate you sitting down with me today. You guys stay dry out there. And have a wonderful Wednesday. And
the other thing too, I saw a lot of you guys that actually commented. I would absolutely go through and respond to the comments. There were some pretty engaging comments I was able to read. We didn't really touch on them too much, so I'll definitely be responding.
Yeah, and on the comments, like a lot of those, when people do share, I don't really get to them just because I end up in conversation with the person that I'm talking to. So by all means, we're not ignoring you out there. We'll get to them. And all the days that they go through, I try to get to them as much as possible. But I'm glad you brought that up.
And can I share with them where to find me?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So you guys can find me on Facebook, Scott Leeper. We also have the Drowning in Addiction Facebook page. By all means, follow that page. If you guys have questions about the book, you guys have questions about coaching, maybe you're looking for a speaker, send me an email at mindmusclestrength@gmail.com. Also on Instagram at @the_Scott Leeper, and LinkedIn, Scott Leeper. So
this guy's all over the place, man.
Yeah. Try.
Hey, it looks like my wife just joined us. So.
Hi, Holly.
Hi, Holly. But anyways, you guys have a wonderful Wednesday, and I will talk to you tomorrow morning at 10 live from Grace College. Take care.